Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the NFL podcast. So, if I sound a little different this week, earlier this week I kind of had a cold, and I did take some cold medicine. But if I sound a little different, don't worry about it. It's just since I may have had a cold, and I'm feeling much better. I feel almost 100%. But by the next time I do a podcast, I will sound normal again. So if I don't sound normal, just letting everybody know potentially why. So this week are the conference championship games at 3:05. Will be Jaguars, Patriots on CBS, and then at 6:40 on Fox, it will be the Vikings and the Eagles. The game will be played. AFC is going to be in Foxborough. NFC is going to be in Philadelphia. All three of these teams, 3 out of the 4 teams, have never won a Super Bowl. The one that has, the Patriots. So the Patriots outbeat them by a wide margin of 5-0. The Steelers, or the Patriots, played I keep saying Steelers since everybody assumed the Steelers were going to win last week in the divisional round. And they're not here. It's the Jaguars. So still getting over the fact that the Jaguars are in the conference championship game. But the Eagles played the Patriots in Super Bowl 39 that the Patriots won. So there could be a potential Super Bowl rematch. The Jaguars have never been. The Vikings have not been since the 70s of the Purple People Eaters era. So it's been a while. Every team has not been. Jaguars never. Eagles, it's been 13 years. And the Vikings have not been for over 40 years. And they had a moment this week, which I'll get to that kind of seemed the opposite of them. It seems like all their misery could potentially be erased by that play. So anyways, what we'll do, since last week we didn't have enough time, we could not get in the divisional series round, what we will do is we will briefly go over each of the divisional matchups games. And then we will do the conference championship games. So the first one was the first one we'll go over will be Saints-Vikings. Now, that was just an incredible game. All-time classic ending. And here's the thing. The Vikings had a 17-0 lead. They were dominating. They had forced multiple Drew Brees interceptions. It looked like, they may limit this very good Saints offense. And the Vikings defense is the Vikings defense. They look like they're going to show up and put together an incredible performance. But instead, they actually came back. The Saints rallied. They scored 20 straight points. 20 straight points. And then the Vikings, kicked some field goals. For sure. And the Saints eventually made it 21-20. The Vikings drove down the field, kicked a field goal. And then Brees, it looked like vintage Brees, leading just an incredible drive down the field. And then made some great throws that drive, hit the field goal. And then, so it's third down, I believe. The Vikings are on their own 39. Take quite a miracle for them just to get a field goal, which a field goal would win it. Threw it deep down the sideline to Diggs on the right side, so it was Marcus Williams, who tried to make the tackle, apparently dove, missed, and then his teammate, Ken Crawley, which I'm sure many of you have already seen the play live, or have at least seen a video of it. It was probably one of the most viral videos of the day for sure. Definitely the most watched thing on television that day, and probably maybe this year so far, not counting the Super Bowl. So anyways, they both fell down, and then Diggs, who was probably either going to, if it would have been played perfectly, would have been tackled. That would have been the game since the Vikings didn't have any timeouts. Or could have gotten out of bounds. Maybe the Vikings would have kicked the field goal and won, and it would have been still very, very impressive, no question. But scored, and no one was anywhere near him, had a wide open field, and Look, for the Saints, for Marcus Williams, I know is a rookie and was a big part of why their defense, the Saints defense, was able to turn around, but think about it. It's just a mystery of what could have happened. Could they have won the Super Bowl? Sure they could have. I really thought they're good enough to go to the Super Bowl. I really thought the Saints could go to the Super Bowl. I thought they had enough talent on offense. I thought their defense was good enough to keep up with the offense in the playoffs. And to know just it's going to be a what-if story. And Marcus Williams will have to live it for the rest of his career. And who knows, maybe the Saints win multiple Super Bowls as a lifetime Saint and is a Hall of Famer and wins multiple Super Bowls, maybe plays 4 or 5 more years and never plays in another playoff game. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen. So for Marcus Williams, for the Saints, next year's about redemption, trying to forget about it. There's nothing you can do about it now. That was last year. What happened last year doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, it's going to be with you forever. I mean, that may be something they just can't get over with. But that was just an incredible play. And for the Saints offense, who did nothing for 3 quarters, finally, late in the third quarter, scored a touchdown, and they had some breaks. There was an interception, a bad interception by Keenum. There was a block punt, things that you really shouldn't do. That gave the Saints 2 opportunities, and again, that drive by Drew Brees would have been legendary, would have been a great thing. And look, Brees could have done nothing about it. That's the way it is. Devastating loss for the Saints. So the question is, can they come back and win a Super Bowl, or is it already over? So, next, let's talk about the Vikings. So, they allowed the Saints offense to come alive, their defense, which their defense really is very good, one of the best in the NFL, and was just dominant for 3 quarters, and it wasn't completely their fault. At first I was thinking, looking back at this, I was thinking, wow, a defense that good had that type of collapse? But it wasn't all their fault. I mean, the Saints had quite good field position 2 out of those 3 touchdown drives. And yeah, they could have held them to a field goal. Yeah, they could have done the same thing, held them to nothing. They could have done more, for sure. And they didn't step up in those situations, especially the last drive. They had a chance to end it right there, 4th down. And the fact that they won, they really should have won. I mean, it's a miracle that they did win. But looking back on it, it would have been a devastating loss. 2 reasons. 1, you had a 17-0 lead deep in the third quarter. You made a lot of mistakes. You allowed a 4th down conversion on that last Drew Brees drive. You really should have won that game. And for the Vikings, it's a huge break. Huge sigh of relief, really, that they somehow won that game. It's a miracle that they did. And teams take advantage of miracles, whether they lose this week, tomorrow, whether they lose in the Super Bowl, whether they win the Super Bowl. That play will always be remembered. Will be famous. Now will be even more famous if they win the Super Bowl. But the Minnesota Miracle, I feel like, is a good name for it. So anyways, playing against the Eagles. Okay? Now this Eagles offense is not the same without Wentz. That is clear. Now, it seemed like they moved the ball fairly well against the Falcons. They did exactly what they needed to. But when looking at it, they could have scored more. They could have scored touchdowns. And look, this is not something you can do against the Vikings, score 15 points and expect to win. But they did what they needed to do. And I think this Vikings defense can really limit this Eagles offense that, again, scored just 15 points, is shorthanded. And the Vikings can really make plays all over the field. They can completely stop that Eagles running game. They're first in all sorts of categories: run, pass, scoring. I think total yardage even. I think they're first in every category. That's pretty amazing. So the Eagles might not move the ball at all. There's a chance they could get shut out. And now one thing to worry about is the Vikings. They play, their offense does not score a huge amount of points. They're not gaining a whole lot of yards. It's very efficient. They do plenty. They do enough to win most games. I like it. They have a good, solid receiving core. And they're pretty good at running. They have a good, solid offense. Not great. Nothing spectacular about it. But it's good. It's good. And I could get worried about that Eagles defensive line, the way they played against Atlanta. Devontae Freeman, 10 carries, 7 yards. And looking at that, Freeman couldn't do anything against that Eagles defensive line. Nothing. And the Falcons made all sorts of mistakes, and we'll get to that in a moment. But looking at that, the Eagles can really limit the Vikings offense. I think they can. This could be a defensive battle. I hate to say this, but this could be a 10-7 game, a 10-6 game, a 13-9 game, whatever, 15-10. I think it's likely that will be very similar to that Atlanta Falcons game versus the Eagles. And for the Vikings to win, they have to put the fourth quarter behind them. They cannot let that reoccur, which you could be somewhat worried, is the defense kind of starting to slump a little bit at the wrong time? And again, this is Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, guys like Michael Thomas, a great, very, very good Saints offense. And this Eagles offense without Carson Wentz with Nick Foles can be very shaky at times. And the scoring has not been high at all. Not high at all the last 3 games. Even if they moved the ball well against Atlanta, they didn't score a lot of points. That's a game they could have easily lost. And the Vikings could just completely shut them down. So anyways, what the Eagles did last week. A lot of positives. They really limited the Falcons' offense last week. Yes, they did. Now I know that's not the same Falcons offense. That was a Falcons offense that normally 2016, but this year had some very good games at times. You thought, yep, their offense is very good. They're rolling again, and then, they crash. Like a great example. The Vikings, they can put on their reference. They shut down the Falcons offense. They held them to just field goals. Okay? So they were really limited by the Vikings. Okay, the Falcons have had some bad losses by not moving the ball, by having poorer connections. You saw a lot of plays in this Eagles game where if this was last year, 2016, the 2016 playoffs, they would have made. And that's why they're very nearly Super Bowl champions. And really should have been Super Bowl champions. Was due to their offense. But listen, they had nothing to show for. Alright? Let's compare playoffs for a moment. 2016. They go against the Eagles defense without Earl Thomas. They take complete advantage of it. They dominated that game. They dominated. Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers playing maybe the best football of his career. And we knew defense was a huge weakness for that Packers, especially pass defense. Dominant. Julio Jones put on maybe one of the best performances by a receiver that I've seen, certainly in the playoffs, and maybe even that I've seen ever. It was just so spectacular, that game. That they destroyed the Packers. That offense was on fire. And that was the thing in the regular season. Their offense was historic. It got Kyle Shanahan, the offensive coordinator, a head coaching job in San Francisco, and apparently that seems, certainly after Jimmy G got there, it seems it could work out great. Very well, so. And which is part of the reason why their offense is not the same, and we'll get to that towards the end of talking about the Falcons. So then, the Falcons in the Super Bowl, they played very well for 3 quarters. They shut down. And, yep, last year was great. Last year their offense was great. You can compare it to this year's. Very different. This year, I wouldn't say it was bad. Inconsistent. So at times, Falcons have a very good offense. Very good offense. This is one of the best offenses in the NFL. I think this team can I think this team can be a Super Bowl contender with their offense. Very good. Very good on both sides of the ball. Then other times. Wow. Their offense really let them down today. They really could have won that game. The defense played well, quite well, but their offense just had nothing to show for. Absolutely nothing happened on offense. They just didn't show up. What was going on? Really? How is the offense this bad? It should be better than that. And another thing. That 2007 Ingerson offense, guess what? The bad version showed up. It cost the Falcons a shot at the Super Bowl. As I mentioned earlier, Devontae Freeman, nothing. Less than a yard per carry. I saw his long run was only 3. 3 yards, so didn't get one even decent run. Coleman played well. Coleman played very well. And when I was kind of watching the game and then kind of looking back over it, kind of reviewing it, I was thinking, maybe they should have made Coleman a workhorse, kept Coleman in the game, and just ignored Freeman since it seems like they're having good momentum. On a drive, bring in Freeman. Oh, well, that's a setback. And I don't know what happened. Coleman was so good against the Eagles. He was dominant. And Freeman was just terrible. I don't know what to say. Was Sarkisian not using Freeman right? Was Freeman in the wrong place at the wrong time? Apparently. So, Ryan missed Julio Jones on a lot of deep passes for sure. They tried to get Julio going. I thought Ronald Darby in Philadelphia, number 41, did a spectacular job against Julio last week. Really did. They really shut down Julio. They couldn't find Julio. Poor connection, and that's been a thing throughout the year. So again, plays that they would have found Julio last year, not this year. A lot of that today. Screen passes. There was one to Gabriel last year. Gabriel was a huge part of that Falcons offense, was just another key piece in that explosive offense. This year was way down. I think that play went for negative yardage. That screen pass didn't work at all. Another terrible play call. Basically what the Eagles were saying the Falcons defense was, that worked last year, but not this year. Last year, not this year. And like I said, that showed up a huge amount in this game. That's the reason why the Falcons season ended. Okay? And again, the Falcons are the worst possible timing for last year, not this year type of offense. Not last year, not this year type of plays. Sarkisian, who's been criticized in the past, had a terrible game. And I started to think maybe Sarkisian should have been fired. And here's the thing. Might as well get into that in a minute. This Eagles team without Wentz, and was very clear that Doug Peterson, who had Nick Foles trying to do the best he could, which Wentz makes him look like a genius, but without Wentz, basically had the call, did a good game plan running. We'll talk about the Eagles offense in a minute, but did a outcoach Sarkisian. Sarkisian's not the head coach, he's the offensive coordinator. And just, I don't know, when late game red zone calling, they targeted Julio twice in the end zone near the end of the game, including the last play of the game. Sarkisian had a terrible screen pass play call. That cost them the game when Julio fell down. And they couldn't get anything going towards the end. That is what cost them a shot at redemption in the Super Bowl. Bad offense. Bad play calling. A lot of, what worked last year doesn't work this year. This is one of the games where we don't have an offense. Well, you know what? You know why I thought the Falcons were going to win? I thought this is Nick Foles. I mean, I saw the way Foles played before this game, the last two games. Giants game played very well. And that was by far the best the Eagles offense have played since that Giants game in Week 15. 16-17, the offense had nothing to show for, especially passing. They got shut out against the Cowboys at home. And this Falcons offense comes in, and they beat them. Okay, this is another bad loss for the Falcons. This is going to go in their legacy as Falcons can't win the big game when it matters the most. And Sarkisian will come back. I've heard reports of that. NFL.com confirmed that a few years ago and deserves a second shot. Came in unfamiliar with the system. Was with Alabama, we forget, during that thrilling national title game for literally one game. And kind of first year learning the offense. I think he has a whole offseason to work with Ryan, work with Julio, kind of work with the guys, and who knows, next year their offense could be great again, and Sarkisian could be a head coaching candidate, or if this keeps up, last year, not 2 years ago, last year, and that's what people are saying a lot in 2018, I would really think about firing Sarkisian. But it's only 1 year. There's two scenarios. This offense, and granted, in 2016 was historically great. You can't expect it to be historically great. But I expect it to be very good. One of the better offenses in the NFL. And it took such a big step. And it's mostly on Sarkisian, who's in charge of calling the plays, who's in charge of running the offense. I think Dan Quinn, who unfortunately, if this Falcons team takes a step back next year, who's done a very good job of building, working with his defense, trying to model them after Seattle, and they're starting to show flashes of that already. I think the Falcons got a good thing going, but they just need to finish games better. And you could look back because who knows, could they have beaten the Vikings or the Saints? Would have been Vikings? Who knows? We don't know. We'll never know. Just like saying earlier, what have the Saints done? You just don't know. And that was a very bad loss for the Falcons and for their organization. People have been fans of this team for 50 years, and they're disappointed yet again. The Falcons started the year of the Super Bowl, the year that the Super Bowl began, and they have been around the entire time. They've been to two of the Super Bowls. They almost won one of them, but they were empty-handed once again. Now, so the question is, next year, do they come back? They say, look, all right, this is in Mercedes. We're going to do what the Vikings did. That could be extra motivation if the Vikings win the Super Bowl in Minnesota. So if they win tomorrow, they'll be in Minnesota. Or if the Falcons win next year, which I think that should be extra motivation for them. I think maybe both sides of the ball will want to be dominant. They'll want to plow through the playoffs, win the Super Bowl in Mercedes. That seems like a lot of motivation for them. It might be a little high of a bar set, but they just got to go back to being consistent on offense, return more to the 2016 level. And now, which version shows up next year? Who knows? Will they be one of the great teams of all time next year? Or take a step back and even miss the playoffs altogether, and people wonder about their future of this team. So, look, the Falcons once again, this season was all about redemption. They're looking for it once again. So we'll see. We'll see with the 2018 Falcons. So anyways, the Eagles. Look, as I talked about the Falcons a lot and their offense struggling, they were very well prepared to play against that offense. They were very well prepared. They looked prepared. Again, they were stopping that deep ball. They were stopping Freeman. They're putting pressure on Ryan. They were very much prepared. Doug Peterson did a great job that game. Did a great job of preparing. Put together a great game plan. So now, look, they run a lot, and their runs were solid. They moved chains, 4 or 5 yards. Their line was outstanding. Nick Foles was very conservative and did not have a great game, but I thought played well. They mixed a lot of running and passing plays, 5 to 10 yards, resulted in long drives. And here's what a pattern could have been like: Eagles, long touchdown or field goal drive. Falcons get the ball and they stall, or they do move the ball a little bit, get 20, 30 yards, but then have to punt. The Eagles were much better at having long drives, managing possession, keeping the ball. They clearly outplayed the Falcons on offense. And look, neither offense was particularly great that game by any means. So next, they did get a break on that Keanu Neal deflection. That was a break. And that made the difference, really. Since Keanu Neal catches it, that's interception, made the Falcons put together their own field goal. Or if it's not caught by the Eagles, maybe the Eagles don't get that field goal, and while the Falcons are driving down, instead of having to go for a touchdown, they go for the field goal. And who knows, maybe they win the game, maybe the Eagles drive, who knows. But that's another thing that's going to be tough for the Falcons to deal with. That play. And the Falcons should have won this game. Yes, they should have won this game, but they didn't. It was on the offense. The Eagles took advantage of the mistakes they made. Like that one. And for the Eagles' strategy against the Vikings, I'd try to do it. Try to do what they did against the Falcons. Try to be similar. The question is, does it work? Does it not? Can they beat the Vikings? I don't know. I trust their defense a lot against the Vikings. And look, this game will be a defensive battle. It'll be close and low scoring. Foles and Keenum may not put up great numbers at all. The score could be 10-6, 13-6, 16-9, 16-12, whatever. There'll be a lot of field goals, not a lot of touchdowns, just a lot of physical defensive football from both teams. It's going to be about defense. And with my game pick, I think the Vikings are going to win. That's what I think they're going to do. They're going to go to the Super Bowl. They're going to play great defense. And the Eagles will play very good defense, but it's just not enough. It's going to be a defensive battle. So the conference championship games, the AFC side. Jaguars, Steelers. Now that is hard to believe, right? Jaguars, Steelers. Why do I keep saying Steelers? I'm thinking about last week. I'm thinking about the Steelers, since I assume they'd be here. Jaguars, Patriots. Jaguars, Patriots. And for weeks and weeks, we anticipated that there would be Patriots-Steelers rematch. Okay? And listen, after that game, I'm sure the Steelers were ready to go to Foxborough. They were ready. People forget. The Steelers would have won that game. They would have had home field advantage in the conference championship game. But they didn't. And so they lost instead of getting Tennessee, a team that they handled very well. They got Jacksonville, a team that they handled terribly in the regular season. And the Jaguars came back and beat them. Now, the score was not what I expected it to be at all. Certainly not by the Jaguars. And certainly not by the Steelers, given how good Jacksonville's defense is. So the Jaguars did is they played barely well enough to win the second game. They played barely well enough to win. But they made more important plays. The Steelers went for it a lot on fourth down since they're kind of on the 40, the Jacksonville 40. They're like, we're not going to punt it. It's too long for a field goal. We might as well go for it. They did. About 3 or 4 times they missed doing it. Twice they got a touchdown out of it. So the Jaguars could have won by more. But then again, they made defensive plays, and we'll get to what they are in a minute, but I was not expecting the score to be that well. And the Jaguars offense, by no means, looked like someone that had scored 45 points. They did not look like this dominant, Patriots, or greatest show on turf, or 16 Falcons, or Manning-led Colts or Broncos. No. Nothing like it at all. They ran a lot. They gave the ball to Fournette a lot. who played very well until he got an ankle injury, and then was really limited from there, and who knows how much of a factor that'll be tomorrow. But Bortles, who, like in Buffalo, didn't exactly do much. I guess he made some runs that he needed to. Slight advantage right there. But Bortles did not pass a lot. Did not get a lot of passing yards at all. More than against the Bills for sure, but it looked like that same type performance. And then made a couple 40-yard plays, found Cole for 40-plus yards, got them into the red zone, led to a touchdown. TJ Yeldon got a 40-yard screen pass in the fourth quarter. They scored 17 points in the fourth quarter, which was critical since the Steelers scored 21. So their offense did what they needed to do. Okay? I mean, their offense did not look good at all in that game. But part of the reason why they got an interception, which basically put them right in the red zone. Fournette scored on the first play. Then again, they returned a fumble for a touchdown. Both of those don't happen. That's a Steelers win. And if the Steelers winning like they should have been, they would not be going for it. They would either be kicking field goals or trying to, and all of them were 4th and 1s. I mean, they were very close. Some of them they missed, which really made the Steelers coaching look bad. You know, Mike Tomlin did not coach a very good game at all. Todd Haley resigned due to those decisions. And the Jaguars' defense, despite that, they were really overall pretty bad, especially in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter. And granted, one of those touchdowns didn't count. It was too little, too late. But Roethlisberger, 467 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. That is a defense. That is the best passing defense in the NFL. One of the very best. I think Minnesota's first. And they allow that many passing yards against the Steelers. I know it's the Steelers. And here's another factor. Le'Veon Bell did not really dominate. Yeah, caught a lot of passes out of the backfield. And he did catch a touchdown. Yeah, Bell had some nice runs. But Bell was nowhere near like he was in the playoffs last year. I think he only had something like 4 yards of carry, something like 16 and 66. But Brown did not dominate. Yes, I thought played well. Caught one of those critical 4th down touchdown passes. He did play well, but the offense just didn't do enough. They shouldn't have been careless. They shouldn't have made those bad decisions. Maybe on 4th and 1, just sneak over Roethlisberger, continue the drive, and then later sell for a field goal. And they could have had 50, 60 points even. Who knows how many they could have scored. And granted, not those turnovers. So the Steelers' offense just made too many mistakes. Their defense, which is also I think was quite good heading into that game, just didn't do enough in the fourth quarter. Okay, against the Jaguars' offense, which at times just completely stops, can't function at times. They just score 17 points in the fourth quarter, including 2 touchdown passes. They can't do that. That's why the Steelers should have won, and they made another very poor decision. In the fourth quarter, an onside kick that would have likely won the game, instead, or would have trusted the Steelers' defense. Instead, they tried to get the ball back. The kick itself failed miserably. I remember watching that. And the Jaguars just moved a few plays, moved a few yards, kicked a field goal, and that was pretty much it. So again, if the Steelers would have made better decisions, didn't turn the ball over twice, both of them led to touchdowns pretty much instantly, they would have won. They should have won that game. The Steelers really should have won that game. They should have beaten the Jacksonville Jaguars. And they score 42, and they still lose, and they allow 45 points to the Jacksonville Jaguars. You can't do that and expect to win. You really can't do that. And look, Blake Bortles, who I don't trust him going against Tom Brady, even if Tom Brady is hurt, did just enough, just like against Buffalo. And the Jaguars will not win if they let Tom Brady throw the... The Jaguars cannot win if they let Tom Brady throw for 400 plus yards or, really dominate, the way Brady played last week. They can't let that happen. They can't expect to win in New England with their defense playing like that. I mean, instead of their effort being an F, their defense made them a D. They're not going to win if they play like the way they did this game. It's not going to happen. The Patriots are just too well coached, have just huge advantage over them. They have a lot more playoff experience, and who knows how much experience matters. Who knows, but that's the fact right there. And look, in order to win, they'll have to have that dominant defense. Hard pass rushing, and their two corners, Boye Ramsey being completely on today, completely shutting down the pass game. It could happen. I think that's a possibility. And if I were the Patriots, or definitely an observer of this game, I would keep an eye out on the Jaguars being like the Giants in Super Bowl 42, like the Broncos were 2 years ago in January of 2016 conference championship game. I would keep an eye on that for that dominant defense coming alive against the Patriots. That's the way they can win. This is a great defense, but they have to show that was a one-time thing. They can't let that happen again if they want to win. So anyways, Jaguars on offense. I mean, I don't know. Bortles needs to do better. Bortles needs to do better. Hopefully they can give the ball to Fournette a lot. Hopefully they can run the ball a lot. They can at least move the ball, play well, score a good bit of points, try to score in the 20s, and hope their defense is dominant. That's what they need to do. That's what they need to do. If not, they're not going to win. So anyways, Brady was great against the Titans. Had over 300 yards, 337, 3 touchdowns. And, one player I could think who could explode this game and have one of the best performances you could ever see. Dion Lewis scored every type of touchdown you could. Kickoff, receiving, and rushing offensive touchdown against the Texans last year in the playoffs. So Lewis could really break out and be dominant, be a super weapon. They could have solid connections. Amendola, the way he played, could have been something. 10 receptions, a little over 100 yards, something that Edelman or Welker would have done, what Amendola did last week. The Patriots have a lot of offensive weapons, and they can really score a lot of points if they can handle the pass rush. So, their defense played great against the Titans, 14 points. And the Titans made it interesting. They made it interesting, They drove down the field. They had that 95-yard drive. Wow, this Titans team, they could really play with the Patriots. That's what you thought in that first quarter. And I made a comment on that, and then it didn't really matter. But the Patriots dominated by the third quarter. It was clear it was over. When the Titans scored again, it didn't count. And the pass rush, dominant. 8 sacks on what is a good offensive line. Now, will that happen again? I don't think so, but I'd keep an eye out on the Patriots pass rush based on what they did last game. I'd view them as a threat now, which is kind of a weakness for them. It's not that they don't sack people, it's that no one really dominates. They don't have any dominant individual pass rushers. They kind of all do it. They have a lot of different guys who are either pretty good at it or just they really don't have a dominant one. They have in the past, just not this year. And I think the Patriots are favored. Their offense is definitely a big advantage. The Jaguars' defense, I'd say, is more of an advantage, especially the way the Patriots' defense has been not that good at times, especially in the first quarter of the year. But very well coached on defense, both of their coordinators. McDaniels is likely to go to the Colts. Hope he can fix Andrew Luck. Hopefully he can get the Colts really going, what people thought the Colts would 3 or 4 years ago. Patricia is going to Detroit. Who knows how successful they do. I wish best of luck to both of them as they try to win their 3rd Super Bowl together. As the 3 coaches, McDaniels was there before as a coordinator on that great historic offense team, led them to being hired by the Broncos, did not work out, came back to New England, and is getting another job at coaching. And what I've heard articles said is McDaniels, which I think this makes perfect sense. And Patricia, too. Patricia was interviewed by the Browns. It's a good thing you're not there right now. And apparently what happened is McDaniels waited for that perfect opportunity. I think Indianapolis is going to be great for him. I think Luck will make him look really good. Hopefully Luck stays healthy and the Colts really become a threat in the NFL. It'll be nice to see Luck win a Super Bowl for sure. No question about it. So anyways, they have great coordinators. I wouldn't be too worried about their defense. I don't think that Jaguars offense is going to play like it did against the Steelers. I really don't. And one thing I think, of all the teams in the playoffs right now, that played last week and won, I think the Patriots look by far the most like a Super Bowl team. And here's why. The Vikings, they did for 3 quarters. Look at that defense, look at that steady offense, and then defense unraveled. Their offense it took a miracle for them to win. That's not a Super Bowl quality team. You don't win Super Bowls by doing miracles. That may have been a once-in-a-lifetime play, but 99 times out of 100, you're not scoring there. It took not quite a Hail Mary, but a Minnesota miracle for sure. So the Vikings are very lucky to be here, and they really almost came back, like their curse of losing big games. And that play reversed that missed field goal in 1998. That would have beaten the Falcons. That 2009 NFC Championship game played 8 years ago. Brett Favre threw that interception, where the Vikings, if they would have just been a little more careful, would have been in the Super Bowl. And who knows? Will they have won? Who knows? You never know. But the Vikings don't look 100% sure like they belong. The way we saw them playing the playoffs, if they played that game again, that exact same game, everything exactly played out, and you said, okay, you're at your own 40, no timeouts, about 10 seconds left, win the game. And certainly, you have to win with a touchdown. You can't do a field goal. They couldn't do that again. So they need to play better against the Eagles. Their offense may not do much better, it may do worse. That defense, even if that is a concern, if it does carry over, you don't want to let that fourth quarter defense carry over. Didn't look like a Super Bowl team. The Eagles, on the NFC side, they did not look like a Super Bowl team. They do not have a Super Bowl caliber offense. With Wentz, they do, yes. They could have been even considered Super Bowl favorites at one point. But what they did was enough to win that game. And against the Vikings, you hope that works again. You hope that offense works. Their defense is a Super Bowl caliber defense. It's not dominant. They don't have any. Their defensive line is great. They have a lot of talented players there. And they're well coached on defense. They don't have any dominant corners, dominant. They don't really have any super dominant guys outside of the offensive line. But they have a very good defense. I like that defense. It could potentially win a Super Bowl. We'll see how it does against the Patriots if necessary. But the Eagles do not look like a Super Bowl team. Do not right now. They don't look like they can win the Super Bowl playing like that every game. Unless they plan on being, we have a historically great defense. And their defense is not, it's very, very good. One of the better in the NFL, but it's not that type of defense where you look at and say, that's a defense that can win a Super Bowl. It's just not quite that level. The Jaguars, the way they played against the Steelers, if they would have just played better on defense, that offense, maybe they really need to get it going now. Against the Bills, they could get away with that. It was 10-3 that won. Certainly did not think they would get away with that. That's why I thought they were going to lose to the Steelers. I originally, going into the playoffs, actually thought, hey, I think the Jaguars can really beat the Steelers. And in the way they played against the Bills, I had no trust in them in that game, especially not their offense. I knew their defense could do it, and their defense did not do it. They made the plays to do it, but they gave up a lot of points, especially late in the game. In the drive that didn't matter, they still did it. And the offense it's not an offense that scores 45 points. Playing like that, you're not going to do that most of the time. And they don't look like a Super Bowl team. So by the way the Patriots played, they dominated on defense. Other than that 195-yard drive, their offense was just great. So by the way the Patriots looked last week, of all the 4 teams left, and neither one of them were supposed to be that good going into the year, or were supposed to be great. At least I didn't think any of them would be this far. So my prediction for the Super Bowl, it's going to be the Vikings. They'll be playing the first ever team in your stadium for the Super Bowl. So you'll technically be the home team, of course. So that would be cool to see that. I'd have the Vikings, Patriots in the Super Bowl. I'll make Super Bowl predictions more in the next week or two. But I'm looking forward to it. I was so glad I could get that podcast in. 4 more teams left tomorrow. We will see who's in the Super Bowl. Can't wait to watch and see. Nothing is guaranteed until they play the games. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.